Two headlines caught my eye. Egg prices so high, Dollar Tree pulls them from shelves. End of the era. $1 pizza slices at New York City's Two Brothers Pizza are toast. That pretty much sums up Joe Biden's America, doesn't it? Eggs are too expensive to sell at the dollar store, and you can't buy a dollar slice in New York City. Also, we just experienced Easter again. The price of eggs were so high that they were even talking about maybe having Easter potatoes. Yes, potatoes are cheap. So next year we might be playing hide the potato, the Easter potato. A little bit more struggle on the bunny rabbits to carry around a sack of potatoes than a sack of eggs any day, right? Thank you for tuning in to #GoRight with Peter Boykin. We've got some great articles to talk about today, and we're talking about economics and Joe Biden. So let's talk about the rise and coming fall of the U.S. dollar, no taxation without representation, the best and worst cities to earn $100,000 in it, the American spirit is on life support, Joe Biden's veto hurts your retirement savings, and Americans know Joe Biden cannot fix our economy, and OPEC Plus announces oil cuts. We got this and more viral videos coming up. I think it's time for us to go right.
We'll be right back with Go Right News. You can follow us on GoRightNews.com for more information.
Hi, fellow patriots. This is Peter Boykin from #GoRight. Share this right now. Time to go right. The rise and the coming fall of the U.S. dollar. In order to understand how the U.S. dollar ended up on the brink of disaster, we must first need to discuss how it came to be the most powerful currency in the world. Bretton Woods Agreement. In the wake of the instability caused by the Great Depression and World War II, world leaders met in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, in July of 1944 to create a stable and predictable system for international trade. The agreement they came up with established the US dollar as the world's primary reserve currency, backed by gold reserves held by the US Treasury. The dollar was chosen partly because the US was the world's largest economy and because of its commitment to free trade and open markets. Petrodollar Agreement. The following year, in 1945, the United States struck a deal with Saudi Arabia which established the US dollar as the currency for oil trade. In exchange, the US provided military protection for the Saudi kingdom. This still created a huge demand for dollars, cementing the dollar's status as the world's primary reserve currency. Foreign reserves held in dollars. At its peak in the 1970s, roughly 80% of global foreign exchange reserves were held in US dollars. By May of 2021, that share had dropped to 59%. The beginning of the end. In 1971, in response to economic challenges like high inflation and a growing trade deficit, President Nixon suspended the convertibility of the dollar into gold in order to give the U.S. more flexibility. The suspension was never lifted. That's why the dollar in 1970 had the same purchasing power as $7.75 today. The beginning of the end of the U.S. dollar's reign as king of currencies came in 1971 when President Nixon took us off the gold standard. It was intended to be a suspension to help deal with inflation and a growing trade deficit, but the suspension was never lifted. Detaching the dollar from gold was like taking the brakes off your car while you're driving down the highway. The first major accelerant to the dollar's demise came in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis when the Obama-Biden administration and the Federal Reserve took extraordinarily short-term measures to try and pull us out of recession, without considering the long-term effects it would have on the dollar. The Federal Reserve began policies like quantitative easing, printing over $4 trillion in new dollars. And when you print dollars, you increase the supply that lowers the dollar's value. The Federal Reserve also lowered the interest rates by nearly 0%, which made investing in US dollars less attractive to foreign investors. The Obama-Biden administration also implemented a $700 billion bank bailout, which added to the U.S. debt and created more uncertainty about the dollar's reliability. Along the way, there are other accelerants like the COVID pandemic and the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, but the reason we find ourselves in the position we're in today, with China leading the revolution against the dollar, can be traced back to Joe Biden's poorly calculated proxy war against Russia and Ukraine. Biden's proxy war with Russia. As Russia invaded Ukraine, just in 2022, Joe Biden responded by freezing Russia's dollar reserve assets. The move was intended to collapse the Russian economy and cause a run on banks, but it didn't play out that way. The result: it exposed that Biden was willing to undermine the global reliability of the US dollar in order to pursue his political goals. Every country in the world after this move would wonder if their US dollar reserves might be frozen in the whim of a senile American president. Today, it was a military conflict in Eastern Europe. What if next Biden freezes the assets held by countries for their LGBTQ policies or climate policies, etc., etc.? China's desire to dethrone the US is nothing new. What is new, however, is the self-inflicted wound provided by Joe Biden freezing Russia's dollar reserves, which gave China an avenue to aggressively start building its anti-dollar alliance. Acceleration. Once the U.S. showed its willingness to freeze foreign countries' dollar reserves, China began brokering alliances with other nations to use their own currencies over the dollar. In Russia, Western sanctions pushed Russia into the arms of the Chinese. The two nations have new agreements for trade, infrastructure, and most important currency. The yen has since replaced the dollar as the most traded currency in Russia. In Saudi Arabia, recently the Saudis met with the Chinese to discuss breaking a 50-plus year track record of only accepting US dollars for oil sales. This new agreement will allow for oil sales in yen and other currencies. In Brazil, recently Brazil and China announced a deal to ditch the US dollar in favor of their own currencies for trade between the two nations. Brazil recently elected a pro-China commie as president. In Mexico, our neighbors to the south have expressed interest in joining the BRICS, the BRICS alliance, an anti-Western alliance that includes Russia, China, Brazil, India, and South America. In France, the French just announced their first ever deal to purchase liquefied natural gas from China in yen. The Chinese are also cutting deals and forging partnerships with countries like Iran, Turkey, Indonesia, and Antarctica. Now here are the numbers. As of today, the US is still far and away the most dominant world reserve currency. US 58%, Euro 20%, Japanese yen 5.5%, British pound 4.5%, and the Chinese yen 2.69%. Now here's perspective. Even though the yen only accounts for a small fraction of global reserves, don't underestimate China's ability to close the gap. 25 years ago, their GDP was roughly $1 trillion. Last year, in 2022, it was over $18 trillion. Now, the big picture: dethroning the dollar isn't just about knocking the U.S. off its perch. It's an attack on the U.S. economy that would lead to hyperinflation as we've never seen before. If current nations don't want to hold U.S. dollars, they would flood back into the United States and devalue the dollars you and I hold today. This is why when the U.S. went to economic war with Russia in 2022, I strongly opposed it. It's not about agreeing with Russia's war in Ukraine. It's about understanding the second and third order effects of the actions we take. Unfortunately, our current president cannot see the forest for the trees. Now, if I'm elected Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, I will do everything in my power, which I've explained before is keeping the Senate straight and working on the school board and anything else the administration would give me. But power of persuasion, I would do everything in our power to get more jobs here in North Carolina, to get more factories here in North Carolina, to encourage people to buy American, buy North Carolina. It's time for you to, I know you want a bargain. I know things are tight, but do you want quality? Do you want American-made products? When you go buy something, check to see where it's made. I would say don't buy it if it's in China. If you can, try to buy it American. Or at least places that's not on this list who actually support the American system. That's what real free trade is about. Please check out peterboykin.com for more information.
Hey folks, this is Peter Boykin and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina. I'm out here driving in the country, doing a little campaigning, and stopped upon this really nice farm with these really cool horses over here. Just wanted everybody to see while I'm out the wonderful country in North Carolina that we have. And I want to protect that as your North Carolina Lieutenant Governor. Vote for me in the coming election and primary. You can check out more about me at peterboykin.com. And every chance you get, go out in North Carolina and enjoy the scenery, especially in the better times of the year. God bless everybody.
No taxation without representation. Back in March of 1765, the British government passed the Stamp Act. It was a tax on any materials printed for commercial or legal use in the colonies. This included items like newspapers, playing cards, and pamphlets. The stated purpose of the tax was to pay off debts incurred by the British during the 7 Years' War and to pay for British troops stationed in the colonies. The colonists would have none of it. Now, later that year, representatives from 9 colonies came together in the New York City for what has been known as the Stamp Act Congress. This represented the first time the colonies united to take action against the Crown. Their main grievance would come to be an iconic American characteristic. They acknowledged that the British Parliament could regulate colonial trade, but it did not have the power to tax the colonists because they were not represented in Parliament. In other words, no taxation without representation. Earlier the following year, in 1766, the British Parliament repealed the Stamp Act. Ultimately, the cost of enforcing the act was more expensive than the money it brought in, but the effects of the act could not be repealed. The seeds of independence had been planted and would ultimately grow into the American Revolution. The source of this is history. We're going to have to repeat that, I guess, soon. We don't know. But again, it all comes down to no taxation without representation. And that's an important part of history. The best and worst cities to earn $100,000 in. A $100,000 salary doesn't take you as far as it used to, especially if you're living in a Democrat city. Now, Smart Asset, a financial technology company, compared what $100,000 can get you after taxes in 76 of the biggest U.S. cities and adjusted it to the cost of living in each location. Now, here's what they found. The best cities to live in, and I was actually surprised on this, is number one is Memphis, Tennessee. I lived there for a year. After taxes, you take home $74,515. But since the cost of living is 14% lower than the national average, your salary is worth $86,444. El Paso, Texas. Since the cost of living is 12.3% lower than the national average, your salary is worth $84,966. And number 3, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. After taxes, you take home $70,302, but since the cost of living is 16.8% lower than the national average, your salary is worth $84,498. Now let's talk about the worst cities to live in. Number 1, this is not a surprise, New York City. New York City! It's worth $35,791. Honolulu, Hawaii is number 2, $36,026. San Francisco, number 3, $36,445. Washington, D.C. People gripe about people in Congress and stuff. They get a salary about $150,000, but we're talking about $100,000. So $100,000 in Washington, D.C. is worth $44,307. It means if you make $150,000, what is that? A little under $70,000? Not much, really, if you think about it, especially if you're a congressperson. Long Beach, Los Angeles. It's a tie between Long Beach and Los Angeles, California. It's $44,623. Now, are you noticing a pattern? The worst cities to earn $100,000 are all Democrat-run hellscapes. Makes me wonder where Chicago is on the list, but who makes $100,000 there? The source of that is Smart Asset. The American spirit is on life support. The American spirit is spiraling according to a recent poll that shows steep declines in patriotism, religious faith, desire to have children, and more. Now, the details on the poll. The poll was done by the Wall Street Journal. It surveyed 1,019 U.S. adults between March 1st and March 13th in 2023. The poll presented values that are quintessential to the American character and asked if the respondents considered them very important. Now, here's their answers stack up to the responses from 25 years ago. When it comes to U.S. patriotism, 38%, down from 70%. Religion, 39%, down from 62%. Having children, 30%, down from 59%. Community involvement, 27%, down from 47%. And money, 43%, up from 31%. The only category to go up was desire to make money. Now, I'm going to borrow from conservative commentator Jesse Kelly, who tweeted, "So weird how those things coincided with an education system designed to attack patriotism, religion, and community." The source of this is the Wall Street Journal and Jesse Kelly. Biden's first veto hurts your retirement savings. Joe Biden issued his first veto, killing a bill that would have prevented private retirement plans from prioritizing woke ESG investments over maximizing savings for retirees. ESG stands for Environmental Social Governance, essential to a communist-style social credit score for businesses that pushes left-wing social environmental goals by issuing ratings on how, quote, responsible they are. In March 2023, both chambers of Congress, including the Democratic-controlled Senate, passed a bill to kill the Biden Department of Labor's new rule that pushes private retirement plans to consider ESG factors when making investments that affect more than 150 million Americans. Now, Biden's veto, according to his veto on Twitter, Biden gaslit Americans by saying, quote, "This bill would risk your retirement savings by making it illegal to consider risk factors MAGA House Republicans don't like." Now, there's two problems with this tweet. One, MAGA House Republicans. This bill was passed in a Democrat-controlled Senate, 50-46, with Democrats John Tester and Joe Manchin voting for it. Now, it would risk your retirement. This is provably false. The Wall Street Journal analyzed data from the past 10 years and found the investment portfolios that avoided woke ESG investments, plus 334%, outperformed the market 230%. Now, West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin slammed Biden's decision, saying President Biden is choosing to put his administration's progressive agenda above the well-being of the American people. Now, what happens next? Technically, Congress could override his veto with a 2/3 majority, but the numbers aren't there. So this assault on Americans' retirement account will continue. The source of this is Fox News and the Wall Street Journal. Americans know Joe Biden cannot fix our economy. A new poll illustrates why Americans think the economy is in the dumps and their belief that the government prioritizes the wealthy over regular citizens when dealing with banking issues. This poll was conducted by CBS News in partnership with YouGov. It was conducted between March 20th and 22nd of 2023 and surveyed 2,117 U.S. adults. Here's what it found. 31% say the economy is good, and that's down from 33% from the previous month. Now, reasons you think the economy is bad. These are the top answers among those who said the economy was bad. Inflation, 89%. Gas prices, 69%. Supply shortages, 62%. Don't trust Biden, 55%. And issues with banks, 54%. Now, have prices on goods and services you buy gone up? 64%. Gone down? 9%. Stayed the same? 27%. Even Joe's supporters say he can't handle inflation. While 45% of those polled said they approve of Joe Biden's job as president, only 32% approve of his handling of inflation, nearly 1/3 of his supporters. In dealing with bank issues, the government protects the interests of wealthy people, 67%, large investors, 64%, poor people, 12%, middle class, 10%. It's clear Americans in both parties know Joe Biden, doesn't have the chops to pull the country out of this inflation crisis. What's worse for Joe Biden is their belief that the regime prioritizes the wealthy over middle class and poor Americans. It's one thing to be a dunce. It's another to be a elitist dunce. Source of this, gasp, is CBS News. OPEC Plus announces oil cuts. OPEC Plus made a surprise announcement, a plan to collectively cut 1.6 million barrels of oil production per day, BPD. The announcement led to a sharp rise in the price of oil. It means the gas at your pump has gone up. If you notice that again, it's not just because it's summertime mix. Now, what is OPEC Plus? It's effectively a cartel of oil-producing countries led by Saudi Arabia and Russia that aim to control global oil prices through coordinated production cuts. Now, who's doing the cutting? The top cuts, not surprisingly, come from the biggest producers in the group. Russia, 500,000. Saudi Arabia, 500,000. Iraq, 211,000. UAE, 144,000. and Kuwait 128,000. Now, this cut is on top of the 2 million barrel per day cut the cartel announced back in October in 2022. Now, what has this done to oil prices? Oil prices surged as much as 8% when the futures market opened. The leading global indicator for oil prices, Brent crude, jumped 5.1% to $84.95 a barrel. For perspective, Brent was $71.03 in March 17th of 2023. When the price of a barrel of oil jumps, so does the price at the pump. This was a smack at Biden. According to reports, Saudi Arabia was annoyed that the Biden regime announced that it would take years before they replenished the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve that Biden depleted in 2022. OPEC was looking forward to reaping the benefits of refilling the 200 million barrels Joe Biden released. Now, the big picture, this sort of price control thuggery by OPEC is exactly what former President Trump positioned and told us to fight against by unleashing U.S. energy dominance. Unfortunately, since Joe Biden has taken office, he's abandoned the Trump policies that gave us the power to confront the OPEC cartel. The source of this is CNBC, Zero Hedge, Wall Street Journal, and Macro Trends. Folks, to recap this podcast, let you know that, I do talk about a lot about Joe Biden. And it's not just because the guy's a Democrat. Frankly, when somebody's the president of the United States or anybody in any position that we have, that we elected official, we have to make sure that they actually can do their job. Joe Biden has proven over all the time he has spent in government, lifelong establishment government, that he does a shitty job, a lousy job. Pardon my French, but whatever. He does a horrible job. And that's why I have no problem talking about Joe Biden. I'm somebody that thinks that the right and the left are necessary because they have to work together to get things done together for all citizens. There are gray areas that separate us, but at the end of the day, we have to find a path to make sure that all of our citizens are taken care of and that America is fruitful. Joe Biden isn't doing that. Now, I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of North Carolina, but I'm running to be everybody's Lieutenant Governor. Right, left, middle, whatever you can be. I want to uphold our Constitution, North Carolina Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, but I want to unite North Carolina for a greater America. So check out my website. It's peterboykin.com. And thank you for tuning in. Hi folks, this is Peter Boykin. I am a true we the people, grassroots Americans first constitutionalist for North Carolina. Overall, I believe North Carolina, America needs economic stimulation, protection on our border, quality education, medical freedom, secure elections, jobs and job security, and improved affordable health care options for everyone. Because together, North Carolina can be united for a greater America. We should put America first, and that means putting Americans first. We are supposed to be a first world nation, so let's start taking care of all of our citizens. Healthcare, food, education, civil rights, and more should never be a left or right issue. The principles of the Republican Party, the right of the individual to achieve the best that is within him, as long as he respects the rights of others, is the source of our nation's strength. Government exists to protect the freedom of opportunity in which each individual's creative ability can flourish. Government activities should be limited to those things which people cannot do at all or cannot do so well for themselves. The most effective government is the government closest to the people. Those who cannot provide for themselves should be assisted by both government and society, but that every effort should be made to help them become self-supporting citizens. Equal rights, equal justice, and equal opportunity belong to all, regardless of race, creed, age, sexuality, sex, gender, or national origin. The preservation of our nation and the security of our citizens depend upon the Constitution, the laws, and the courts, and that respect for them is the responsibility of every individual. The government is accountable for maintaining sound money and a responsible economy. Individual rights, liberties, and properties are continuously eroded when citizens are oppressed by excessive taxation, inflation, government waste, and overregulation. The government is responsible for national defense, and only a strong America can remain a free America. It is absolutely essential to maintain a strong national defense posture in order that we may at all times negotiate from a position of strength, not weakness, and that the republic is based on. As a constitutionalist, I am committed to the preservation of this country, and this is my goal today and for the future. And that's what makes me a conservative. The power of one becomes the power of many, the voice of many. Time to hashtag with Peter Boykin. Peter Boykin for North Carolina Lieutenant Governor 2024. Do you like what you see? I will be running in 2024, and I'll need lots of support. The website is peterboykin.com. That's PeterBoykin.com, and it's updated. I plan to run a clean campaign as we will have a lot of candidates running, and I just hope that money doesn't continue to decide who runs things in Raleigh or D.C. Our government should be ran by the people, and mainly by those like myself who can understand the everyday struggles of its citizens. Win or lose, I cannot just sit on the sidelines and comment. Running is activism. So if you have or you like the content that I've put out in the past, please help me towards the future. Let's hashtag Go Right with Peter Boykin.
Thanks for listening to Go Right with Peter Boykin. Please like this post, and please subscribe and follow and share this podcast to all your social media accounts, and visit GoRightNews.com for more Go Right News with Peter Boykin. If you like what you hear, help support the podcast by donating. The link to donate is on GoRightNews.com. Thank you for your support.
Check out this news story and more on GoRightNews.com and the podcast #GoRight with Peter Boykin.
Go right and register to vote. Your vote matters, so vote. Go right and vote. #Go right. Go right. Do right. Be right. Go right. Do right. Be right. Lead right. Think right. Vote right. Vote right. Think right. Lead right. #Go right.
It's time to join the Go Right movement. It is time to #Go Right for America. Join us at GoRight.us and GoRightNews.com. It is time for the great American revival, and it is time to #Go Right for America.
Thanks again, everybody, for listening to this, and please share it everywhere. Again, this has been #GoRight with Peter Boykin, a part of GoRightNews.com.